Hi, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the I Owe It to Myself podcast as we continue on with our bookish interests and continue with the read-along series. This is the third episode of Oathbound, which is the third book in the Legendborn cycle. We're going to be talking about chapters 35 through 47. The last episode for this book will start at chapter 48 and go through the end of the book. So I think I've mentioned this before, but I don't know that I will ever really get away from 3 to 4 episodes per book. The books that I have been reading so far have required that amount of episodes, but I want to say that with like an asterisk on the word required. What I mean by that, at least for this book, I have tried to more conscientiously parse out how much I'm reading per recording. And I don't want to over-index on that because, again, the big thing that I'm trying to accomplish with these recordings and this read-along, at least for myself, is to have it still feel pretty organic. I don't want to over-engineer that I have to read exactly X amount of chapters for each episode, but I also do want to make sure there's a little bit of a method to the madness. And so I did take that into account of making sure that there was a little bit of an even split of how much I was reading to each recording. So kind of a happy medium, I guess, if you will, and we'll see how that continues as I start new books and do new read-along series. But what I wanted to also say in regard to that asterisk about required is the books that I have been reading have been pretty lengthy, and it does kind of work out for the read-alongs to have about 3 to 4 episodes. But I do know that in one of the recordings that I've done in the past, I only ended up reading like 5 or 6 chapters. So sometimes the desire to want to speak about something or share thoughts has been so great that I've been like, screw it, it doesn't matter. We're just going to do a recording about a smaller snippet of the book. I also want to recognize the fact that people may not be reading that many chapters at a time. People may not be reading, 14, 15, 16, 17 chapters at a time before they're taking a break. And to be honest, I didn't read all of these chapters before I took a break. I have read this many chapters over probably 3 sittings. So the experience of reading is going to be different for everybody. And I just want to say that as you read along, I know that it can be hard to be waiting for this many chapters to be done before you get to hear an episode about what it is that I'm talking about. This is all the kinds of things that as this community grows, as I hope it grows, that I hope that people feel comfortable talking about, letting me know, this stretch of chapters is too many chapters, or I want more episodes, or whatever the case may be. I think that that is the type of stuff that I hope that the community feels comfortable sharing, and why I want to comment on it. I just want to share my thoughts for what this process is looking like and how I'm recording right now. But if I get the privilege to continue to do this for a larger group of people, that I hope that we can talk about that and see if there's ways to adjust in the future if that is what people want. But all of that to say, I think that this process has been going well so far. I do want to comment on a couple of things about the holidays and where I'm at before we dive into the book, though. So the last little bits that I'll say just in regard to the podcast journey and kind of my process in general is that the holidays was far less productive than I hoped that it would be. I did edit over the holidays, but not as much as I wanted to. I did read over the holidays and I did get a recording in, so we'll see how that recording quality is when I get to the place of editing that episode. It was a little bit harder to find time for this than I thought that it would be. I think, honestly, the reason for that isn't because I didn't want to. I definitely did want to. And I actually, before I went on holiday break, I had a vision of using that time, of having I didn't have any work. So it was like, let me use that time for this. It's the perfect time to pour into reading and editing and all of this kind of stuff. And the reality is that I just was not in the headspace to do that. Some stuff with my core job put me into a place where I really just needed to pour into family and friends. And again, even though I did read and I did record and I actually did edit, it wasn't as much as I wanted to, and I didn't kick off a new series that I had been wanting to do and planning to do for a while which was a bummer, but I'm really not holding on to those feelings all that much. I am really just allowing myself to feel all of what I was feeling during that time. And it really was just that I needed time with family and friends. I needed to fill up my cup in that way. And I'm really glad that I did. I spent extra time home, and that was really great as well. And so I've just allowed myself to really pour into unplugging a little bit and not being on a schedule and relaxing while I was on this like holiday break. And now that I'm back, I'm trying to find what my schedule looks like again and how I can incorporate and prioritize doing this podcast. And I don't want it to sound like it's a chore. It really isn't. I still really love this. I enjoy it. The books that I'm reading, even if I get the littlest bit of like, oh, I don't know that I want to read today, like that kind of feeling, the minute I pick up the book and I start reading, it's just like, girl, what are you even worried about? You love these stories. You love these books. Like, I really enjoy this process, and I'm still very much a fan of giving myself the space to do this and to have this creative outlet. I have not lost that interest and zest for wanting to do this, but you also have to listen to yourself, and you have to give yourself grace to know that even your best laid plan is just not always going to be what you wanted it to be, and that's okay. So the last thing that I'll say is that I did have a series that I really wanted to start. It is a 5 or 6 book series, which means that the read along is going to be quite extensive because, again, if we go back to what I was just saying, if I do 3 to 4 episodes per book and you have that times 5 or 6 books, that is a lot of episodes, but that is expected when you're talking about a 5 or 6 book series. And I really wanted to do that. I wanted to kind of challenge myself to take that on. But now I'm sitting here and I think I'm maybe changing my tune. And I hesitate to say that because I don't exactly know. So I think that I'm going to spend some time really looking at the books I have in front of me and deciding where I want to go with this. I have talked in episodes that have already been posted, and even some that I've been editing that haven't gone out yet. I'm sure I still mention it, like I'm really excited for what's to come, and this is going to be a big challenge and all of this kind of stuff. There's going to be a moment where I take on series that are that big and that I do read along for it and that I commit to it, and I am excited for that. I just don't know anymore if I want to do that right now. And I think it's because I was blessed to get a lot of books over the Christmas holiday. And I think that it's kind of changing my tune of where I want to spend my time and what I want to dive into. So all of that to say, I really want to commit to doing a read along for an entire book series. And I don't want to not dive into that. I want to really fall into a good series of books where I can do read along style for every book in that series. And I think that I feel a little bit of pressure in myself to figure out what that is. I've also been blessed with getting the Quicksilver book and the second book that comes in that. But again, I just don't know if I want to do a read along for those or not. There's plenty of other books that I have that I could do read alongs for that are series, but they're either I don't own all of the books yet or the series isn't finished yet. Like there's just so many bits and bobs that go along with what I have and where I start, and do I do a series that is already complete or not? I don't know. So all of that to say, there's a lot that I have to kind of think about and decide where I want to take this next. I say all of this and I'm rambling on for far longer than I should to just say that as you pick up a creative project and you decide which path to take, it is okay to change your mind. And that is the beauty of it being something you own and control. You can change what it is that you want to do. And it drives me a little bit nuts that I know that I have recordings out there saying that I have the perfect series for fall and winter and it's going to be great to do during that time and it's going to be our first big recorded series together and all of this stuff, and to be here in this moment where I should have started reading that and committing to that. And I just am a little bit lackluster for it for no reason other than just me and the way I feel about it for some reason changing. Like, I want to read that entire series. It is going to happen, but is it going to happen right now? And am I going to record for it? I don't know. And I think that that's okay. But I also recognize that as a content creator, I want to create consistency for those of you who are following along this journey and want to be here and listen to this podcast. I don't want to commit to things and then dare I even like put it out there, the series and the author and all of this stuff, and then not do it. If I'm going to continue to do that and be excited about things and plug things, I have to commit to that into my schedule fully. And I will admit that I'm holding on a little bit to the fact that this is a very early on podcast with a very low listener count. And so I'm giving myself grace to be this flexible and to change my mind. But I pray that there comes a time where I can't do that, where I have to commit to what it is that I'm saying, because that means that I will have a really great follower count and community that wants to read these things and wants to invest in them and believes in me to do that and wants to hear what I have to say about it. But I'm not there yet. So I'm just giving myself grace to figure out this journey as I go. And I appreciate your patience that if you've listened to all of these episodes so far and you know what I'm talking about when I'm kind of plugging these things and excited about them and it's not exactly happening, I appreciate you giving me grace for that. But I do promise you that I'm going to do things that I'm excited about and interested in and series that I really want to share my thoughts with. And the last thing I'll say before diving into these books is it doesn't mean that every series I read I'm going to love. That's the thing that I also have to remind myself. I have so many new books. Again, I'm blessed to have so many new books, but I could dive into them and I could not jive with it. But it is still something that could happen in this podcast where every series that I am sharing about or talking about may not be my favorite. And I so far have been leaning into what it is that I like and I enjoy because that's what gave me the real motivation and interest to do this and talk about it. That's what makes me excited to record. But there may come a time where I'm not exactly loving everything about the characters or the story or whatever. And it's not that I want to put out a podcast about books or series that I don't like, or if there's like an author's style that I don't resonate with, but that's the reality. This isn't all about everything that you just love. And sure, I could make it that because again, this is mine and I can do what I want with it and I can publish what I, put out content in whatever way, shape, or form that I want to and how I see fit. But I think that that is just part of the process, is being able to also say that I liked the series enough to read it and to finish it, or I liked this book enough to read it and finish it, but I didn't really love the story or the characters, and here's why. I think that that's part of just the experience of being a reader. So there may come a time where that happens too. I don't know. We shall see. But I say all of that and touch on all of these things to say that there is no perfect science to this. I think your best laid plans can change. I know for a fact that they can. And I'm trying to be open-minded and flexible, but I still really love reading and recording. So I thank you all for being here. I thank you for listening to me ramble on about what this journey is like to create a podcast and to be a content creator and to be a reader and to find a balance of satisfying all of those things. And what we have today for this episode of Oathbound, again, chapters 35 through 47, is some of the best reading that has come out of this book so far, dare I say. Every time I pick up this book, it takes me not long to dive back in and to be like, gosh, I really love Tracy Deonn's writing style. I love these characters. I'm invested in this story, and I'm really excited to talk about these chapters. So 35 through 47, that is 12 chapters. And let me tell you, all of those chapters is Nick and Bree with their friends in this house trying to get the Demon King's crown. And man, I have a lot of feelings about that. I didn't think we would spend that many chapters inside this godforsaken house. I did not think that this crossover of Bree's old life with Bree's new life was going to be taking place over that many chapters. But we are still there inside this house, and I'm here for it. I'm really glad about it. And that's the core of what I want to talk about. Obviously, if you've been reading along with us, you know how Bree and Nick got to this place. And oh my gosh, it's some juicy stuff. As I mentioned, you have Bree's new life and Bree's old life coming together. One of the things that I've already commented on, and it's going to come up right now as I make this point, but probably again in this recording, which is the fact that Bree is having this realization that Erebus lied. And it's not that that is so mind-boggling. She knows that this man is a demon king. So obviously he's not loyal to anybody but himself. It's not a surprise that he lied, but she's processing this rather big lie, which is the fact that he said, the people in your old life are not going to be happy with you if you cross paths with them again, because they're going to think that you just forgot about them and that you don't care. And he planted the seed of doubt that these people were going to have grace for her. And now, not only has she run into Nick in very, very close quarters, but Mariah is there as well. And both of them are exactly the people that she needed to see at this point in time, because they have been giving her so much grace, which we're going to talk about. Nick, we've already seen that happen a little bit, but I'll talk a little bit more about Mariah in a second. And all she says when this happens in her inner monologue is going back to that thought of Erebus telling her that people were going to be so mad at her, going to hate her, turn on her, whatever. They're going to think that you forgot. And she just immediately equates it with the fact of the proof that is right in front of her that they are not, that they are understanding and that they're asking questions to support her and to understand. And she's blown away by that. She's these people are not so self-centered and so disconnected from who I am as a person to just write me off because I don't know who they are. They know something happened without me having to say that it did, and they want to help me. And already, I think that that is reinforcing what is going to be the strength that she needs to kill Erebus. She has already decided that she's going to do that. That is part of what her mission is now. And so this interaction is going to just feed into that for her to do that when the time comes. And I'm really happy about that. So let's backtrack just a half second. We already know that Nick knows Bree. Bree knows that Nick knows her and knows that the feelings that she's feeling, even though she doesn't know who he is and she can't recognize him, she knows that there's intimacy there. She knows there's care there, big affection. She doesn't quite know what to do with it, right? So we're experiencing Bree kind of learning what to do about these feelings as she's going through it. That this is her inner monologue of I don't exactly know what this relationship was with this man, but I know he's gorgeous. I know he's attractive. I know that I feel that way, not just as seeing him as a stranger, but my inner feelings to remember him are all over the place with lust and affection for this man. So I know that we had good feelings about him, but she's not blindly leaning into it. Her inclination is to also kind of have her wall up and question him. And the thing that's beautiful about that is what tells Nick that this is still Bree. Every time there's this little moment where she pushes back or is quote unquote stubborn or has a wall up in defense, because remember, she doesn't know him, but she does, right? So she's trying to figure it out. You will see in the writing that they say Nick smirks or Nick has this look in his eye or whatever it is. But then he also will make a comment of I know you do, or that's exactly what you said before, or whatever. He's acknowledging the fact of you have every right to say what you're saying, and I expect nothing less because that's who you are. That's Bree. And so it almost is filling him with joy and pride that Bree is still in there, and that the core of who Bree is hasn't changed, even though Bree doesn't remember him. And so you're getting both sides of, even though we're not getting Nick's point of view, you're getting both sides of knowing that he's being comforted because it's still the same Bree, and she's being comforted because he's respecting the fact that she is who she is, and she sees that he accepts her for who she is, even though she doesn't, quote unquote, know him. The next thing that I want to comment on is what I just said, which is that we're not getting anyone else's perspective. For the entire book up until a few chapters before this recording, we got both sides. We were getting everybody's separate sides. But now that all these people are together, we were getting perspectives from Mariah, from Nick, from Bree, from William, Natasha. But now that at least Nick and Mariah and Bree are together, we're only getting Bree. And it's not saying that it's Bree, you just know that it is. It's just kind of the classic writing from the main character's point of view. So we're not going back and forth between points of view. which I'm kind of glad that we're not. It's allowing you to get really invested in the situation within this house. And I think that's a little bit of what's making me really excited about recording. It's not that the different perspectives made me less excited, but I think it just allows me to be more invested because you have this running story from one perspective and you can just really kind of, it feels like, even though Bree is missing memories still, it feels like I'm back with OG Bree again, because there was moments at the beginning of this book specifically where she was there, but she wasn't. And you felt like you were getting to know somebody a little bit new. And I've commented on that in a couple of different ways in the past recordings for this book. And so it feels like OG Bree. And I think that that is intentional with, as she finds her way back to herself with Nick and Mariah and all these familiar people. And I really like that. So we're just in one perspective. It's just her perspective the whole time. What I want to say when I think about these chapters that I've read, because there's a lot of things I want to comment on, and I kind of want to go in order of the chapters, but for the sake of not jumping around and making it confusing. But also, again, there's a lot that I want to say. So I guess bear with me on this. There's a moment where, before we kind of get into this section of chapters that I'm in, where the group decides we need to shift. I comment on this in another episode, but let me just really reground us in where we are. Nick was Benedict, that was his alias, and Ava was Iris, the fiance, when they first got to the mansion. And then Bree and Zoe were sisters, and Mariah was a gallery owner or person. All of those invites, for the most part, a lot of those invites have changed because Nick and Bree got caught together. And because they knew that people weren't really recognizing them that much in the night yet, he changed it so that Bree was now Iris. So Nick and Bree are Benedict and Iris. Zoe and Mariah are the sisters because Mariah's the only other dark-skinned person. And so it works out that she can switch places with Bree and be a sister. And Ava is the gallery person. So they have just the right amount of people to switch up these invites, and people haven't seen them that much to be able to do that. Ava is not happy about this. But honestly, and I kind of laugh about this, it doesn't really seem that anybody gives a shit. It's like, this is what has to happen. But I will say that even in this moment, Ava's like, this is the only choice. We're all going to get killed if we don't do this. So I get it, but she's not happy about it. So that all happens, and then we settle into where I start with this recording in this set of chapters is Nick and Bree together at the table. This is all after people tried to break in, and they're back in this ballroom together, and Mikhail is there, and he is going to address the room of this is what's going to happen. As they're waiting for this to go down, Nick and Bree are obviously talking. So this is the very beginning of Bree having a minute to catch her breath and to be like, how do I know you? What are we doing? What is this game plan? All of this kind of stuff, right? Her mind is going a million miles an hour. What they quickly realize or are told from Mikhail himself is that everybody is staying at this compound, at this house for the next few days into the weekend. They aren't doing the auction that night because they need to kind of regroup, and they've already moved stuff around. So where they were housing things for auction has been shifted to provide more protection. And because they haven't captured whoever was at fault for all of what has happened, they believe them to still be on the property. And so everybody is going to stay for the weekend. And he's touting this as two things. One, we're going to find you. But two, for everybody else, enjoy being on the property. We're going to give you clothes, all your meals, everything is at no expense. Enjoy your time being here. And there's this realization from Bree and Nick that these people who are here are so up their own ass, excuse my language, but truly in terms of just hoity-toity, being rich, wanting power, wanting money, wanting to be in this type of elitism, that they want this peek behind the curtain. They want to stay on this property. They want as much time there as possible to be wined and dined by this man and to see all of what's happening and to soak up the drama and all this kind of stuff. And he mentions that this has happened before. And he does say you're free to go, but basically you're not going to be able to come back if you go, kind of thing. So everybody realizes they have to like hunker down. Two things come out of this. Nick gets really agitated, and Bree immediately takes that as like, he wants nothing to do with me. What happened in that elevator, us kissing, this whole facade of us being fiancés together is just for show. He really doesn't like me. There is something here that is angering him because she doesn't know any better, because again, lost memories. The other side of that is Zoe and her are like, well, what the hell do we do? We can't tell anybody. They took our phones. We can't tell Elijah. We can't tell Erebus. They're going to freak out. So what do we do? Well, Erebus gave them overnight bags. He had them bring overnight bags. And actually a lot of other people there have overnight bags. They all know that things can change, right? I mean, with demons in general, the game can change. So they came prepared. It's likely he's going to know that something like this happened. So they just have to hope and pray he doesn't show up and blow everything to hell. And they just have to stay there and figure it out. It's also good because it gives them another chance to try to get the crown. But it's also bad because they're staying basically, quote unquote, free, but locked up in this house and on these grounds with a bunch of people who are going to be all looking at each other like you did something, and it's dangerous. It truly is dangerous. Anyway, they know that they have to stay there, and essentially what Mikhail ends up saying is that we're going to do communions, and we're going to be asking people a set of questions as a way to be able to understand if they were or were not involved in what has happened. Two things happened. Nick and Bree were both trying to get an artifact. We don't yet know if Nick was trying to get the crown, but we know that Bree was. That's how they got caught up in each other. But when that happened, somebody else was breaking in somewhere else on the property. What Mikhail is trying to find out is both things. Who broke in outside of the main house? Who was trying to steal something? And who hurt his guard inside the property, which that was Bree. And he said that like his guard is alive, but he was really injured and needed medical attention. So he's trying to figure out both things. So already they're like, well, shit. How do we make our way through this when we know that we're culprits of this situation? Fast forward, everybody gets room assignments. Bree and Nick obviously are in a room together. They're supposed to be this engaged couple. Nick sweeps the room. There was a camera. He takes the camera out. They try to get comfortable. They agree very quickly. Well, they don't agree, but Nick says, I'm going to sleep on the chase. You can sleep on the bed. Again, reinforcing this fact of Bree feeling like this man hates me. He's just here to do a job. I don't understand why he doesn't want to touch me, why he doesn't want to be near me, because in the elevator, those emotions and feelings and everything that I know I felt, I know was returned to me. Why he isn't letting that be the case, why I have these feelings as if we were very close and have strong feelings for each other, but he's not leaning in. She's having trouble with that. And she's trying to reconcile that on the other side of the same coin with what I mentioned earlier of he's giving her a lot of grace in being nice to her and trusting her and helping her, even though he knows that she doesn't remember him. So she's like, how are both of these things true? Like, what is this feeling that's happening right now, and where's that coming from? Which I'm going to talk about more in a second. Because they're together, we will presume, have to assume and presume that Zoe and that Zoe and Mariah are in a room together and Ava is off somewhere as well. We also come to learn that their clothing sizes have been taken, so they're going to be provided clothes. They've been given like pajamas for the night, but that clothes will be delivered in the morning. So they have what they need for the evening. So when they're inside these rooms, they take their masks off, and Bree can finally fully see Nick's full face. He obviously already knows what she looks like, but there's just a little bit of a moment where she's really taking that in and is just really like, damn, this man is every bit as attractive as I have known him to be. But anytime somebody comes to the door, they step outside the door, they wear their masks, and that's true for everybody on the property. Very quickly, a couple of things happen. There's two things that I want to mention. And again, bear with me in terms of order of operations of how they actually happened in the book, because I don't exactly remember, but I want to talk about both. Nick appears to be agitated about the fact that he has to stay there. And what he tells Bree before they even get to the room is like, I can't be with you this long. We can't spend this much time together. And she's taking this in a kind of way that she shouldn't be. When they are in the room together, Nick kind of has this like vibe about him, right? He wants to sleep on the chase, she'll sleep in the bed, whatever. And it kind of comes to a head where Bree is like, I don't understand. Like, you don't want to have anything to do with me. You don't want to even touch me. Like, she just kind of starts to question it. And you are experiencing her inner monologue of feeling a lot of really strong feelings about this, right? She's feeling sad about it. She's like conflicted about it. All the while, this is still a man who is like comforting her and she has to trust, and he's trying to help her through the situation. And so there's just a lot of feelings that are happening. And Nick basically says, you're misunderstanding me. It isn't that I don't want to. I absolutely want to. I want to do all of the things, but I can't. And essentially what we find out, not necessarily even in the first interaction or the second interaction, because this conversation continues for many chapters throughout this time. But what you come to find out, the entirety of what you find out from Nick, is that he doesn't ever want to take advantage of Bree. He wants to do everything right by Bree. Every step, every move, every touch, every moment, he wants it to be in the vein of being right by Bree and doing right by her, honoring her, respecting her, honoring her wishes, whatever it is. And what he basically is saying is like, my willpower with you is not strong enough to honor that, but I know that I have to. I want to, I need to, but also I'm human and I care so much about you. And after not seeing you for so long and knowing that you're different, but you're the same, like, it is hard for me to keep my hands off of you. It's hard for me not to be affectionate. It's hard for me not to give into all of that. But also, like, this isn't you. And what we come to find out in one of these interactions that I found really profound was, because she pushes him on these moments, he says at one point, Bree, it isn't the fact that you don't remember. Like, memories be damned, that's not the problem. You are exactly who you think you are, and I know that you are exactly yourself. And it goes back to the point that I made before about how when Bree pushes back or is stubborn or whatever, how he like smirks or makes these comments. He knows in every interaction that they've had that Bree is exactly who she is. She is herself, and he knows that she is herself. And so it isn't about the fact that she's missing memories. Even if she never gets her memories back, that isn't the problem. So what he's saying is, it's not the fact that you don't remember how we got here and everything that led up to this exactly, all the feelings, all the intimate moments, that isn't the problem. The fact that you're missing those, sure, it sucks, but it doesn't matter because you're still you. But I want you when you are every bit of you. And I think what he means by that, if I am understanding what he was saying in one of these interactions, is you still very much have like this mission to carry out. You have a goal in mind. This is Bree in every sense of what I know her to be, but you have something that you're trying to accomplish. And I'm not trying to be with you intimately or affectionately at a time when your head is not on straight. And again, it has nothing to do with the loss of memory, but you have a mission. You have something you're trying to accomplish. You have something you're trying to carry out, and that's weighing heavily on you because it should. Just like I have this quest, and even though it was to try to find, Cell in you, I disguised it as trying to do this whole thing with the Morganes. And now you're standing in front of me. My quest isn't really done either, right? Like, I think what he's trying to say is when the dust settles, when we've accomplished what we want to accomplish, and when you are like at peace with yourself and life for even a moment, that's the time and when I want you. Because you're not distracted by anything else. Your emotions aren't feeding off of a situation that you're in the middle of. Like, you're wholly sound and making the best decisions you can make for yourself because you will have the ability to do so and not in the heat of the moment. And what Bree is telling him in one of these interactions is, but what if we don't get that chance? Like, we're in the middle of this war and we don't know what the outcome is going to be. We don't know if we're going to be promised tomorrow. We don't even know if we're going to make it out of this house alive. So we need to seize every moment that we have. And he's kind of like, yes, but no. What ends up happening ultimately with them together through all of these interactions that happen again over several of these chapters that I've read in this particular chunk of the book is they have many moments where they kind of start small with just kissing again and putting their hands on each other. And then it gets to be more hot and heavy than that. And Nick catches himself and like they stop at one point and she just says a lot of what I've been saying, but she says, can we just be Nick and Bree like at night? And what she's basically saying is, I want you to sleep in this bed with me, and let's just throw caution to the wind. Like, let's trust ourselves to be in the bed together, to not take it to the place that neither of us, like, that we're not necessarily comfortable taking it to for all the reasons we've talked about, even though we both want to, but let's just have what we can have. And he agrees. And so they finally start sleeping in the same bed. But it takes them many interactions and days and whatever to get to that point. And it is very sweet because they start to, you know, especially one of the moments towards the latter half of this chunk that I've read, they wake up one morning and they, you know, have this like just waking up conversation where he's like affectionate and kissing her shoulder and her neck and like talking to her, and it's just so gentle and tender. And the thing that I want to comment on, which is one of the things that I was thinking through the past couple of nights as I was reflecting on what I had already read, is that while we saw Nick and Bree have time alone together in prior books before Nick was taken, and they were affectionate, this feels wholly different. And it is because, in my opinion, these are different Nick and Brees than what we started with. This version of them is a more raw version than ever before. And I think it's because of what is, I know it's because of what has happened. The Nick and the Bree that we knew in the beginning knew they had feelings for each other and were leaning into that, and friends knew and people saw them together, Sel saw them, like they weren't hiding the fact that they had affection for each other, even though everyone, including the Order, was like, y'all can't be involved because of the mixing of the lines. Like that's never going to happen. But before they really got really far down that road of like what their life would actually be and whatever, everything happened, right? And they haven't been together for a really long time, for many, many months. And so now that they're together, they are not the same people. Bree sure has lost memories, but even if you put that aside, she is a different kind of being in terms of her power and her understanding of her path and everything that she knows. Everything she's been through with Sel, everything Nick's faced, they are different people than when we started. And in a way, it makes this affection that they share with each other, in my opinion, more raw and more of a deep connection than it ever could have been before, because the understanding is so much greater now. They know everything that there is to know. They know the truth that she is Arthur's scion and he's Lancelot and not anything different, right? When they first met, he was the scion of Arthur. There was a different power dynamic. All of that has changed. Everything has changed. And so they're in this moment of like life and death. But it isn't just the fact that they're in this house. The entirety of the lives that they're living is life and death until they take down the Order and they figure out what the hell's going on and how to like get through it. And so, yes, it's a little bit of this honeymoon phase where they're getting this precious time together. And in the end of it, they know that Nick has to go one way and Bree has to go the other because she can't just leave Erebus. But it's also coming from a place of like all of these layers, all of this secrecy that they didn't even know was there. It's not like they were necessarily even holding secrets, but all of these layers are peeled back and they are unapologetically themselves. It is the naked, raw truth of who they are. And it's so much more profound. And when I had recorded past recordings, I remembered thinking and saying like, I think that her and Sel are really going to be the relationship that is leaned into, and Nick is going to kind of be on the outside and have to kind of like accept this truth and just let it be. And he's going to be more of like a friend than a lover. But that isn't what's happening here. And I admit that I have leaned into every bit of this interaction. There was never a moment where I was like, but what about Sel? But what about Sel? And I think that is I know that's a testament to how Tracy is writing and how she's weaving these characters back together. But the way that things are coming together for them just makes you want this for them. And that's a conflict because you know that Sel is a very real factor in all this, which I'm going to talk about in a second. So there's a lot of raw connection and emotion and affection that's happening here. And I, as much as I am loving it from like the giddy romance side of me that loves that, I do think it's going to feed into her and her will in killing Erebus and prevailing. It gives her life to know that people care and love her. I don't know that this is going to end happily for her and Nick necessarily, But I'm not really thinking about that right now. I'm just thinking about how this is all feeding into what she's going to hold on to and pull from when she's in the heat of the moment of having to make really big decisions and like really big battle. And I think it's a good thing. The other side of all of this from her and Nick that I want to talk about is all these other friends that are there. So in very short order, they end up finding out that there's secret passageways in the halls that go from room to room, and Mariah and Zoe find their way to where Nick and Bree are. They all decide they can't be in these main rooms together, and that Zoe and Mariah had found a library that was abandoned that nobody's occupying, and they can get to it from where Nick and Bree are and from their room, so they all convene there. And that is their secret meeting place where they go and they talk very freely about things. Many things happen in this room over these chapters, so I'm just going to kind of talk about it as a whole, again, not necessarily chapter by chapter. But essentially what ends up happening over the time that they're at this property, in this library room, and amongst this group of friends, is everybody ends up being mostly on the same page. Throughout all of these days together and the time that she has with Nick alone, with Nick and the rest of the group, with just the girls, Ava's not included in all of this, by the way, but with the four of them, Zoe, Mariah, Bree, Nick, everybody comes to the same understanding of several things. One of them is that everybody knows that Bree is with the Demon King and that she's here for the crown to save root crafters. They talk about that, all of this kind of stuff. When that conversation happens, she talks about how she burned her ancestral plane. Mariah obviously gets very upset about this, but as she asks questions and inquires and Bree explains and gets emotional about it and whatever, this interaction happens when Nick isn't there. And I actually find it very endearing that it was just the women together and that it was women of color together having this conversation about this plane and what was going on, because these women can pour into her in a way that if it was a white woman, or even Alice or even Nick being there, or a man, I guess, in general, maybe wouldn't be able to. And they basically hear her out. They share their concerns and frustrations with her, but they give her grace and they say, like, Bree, we understand, but like the purpose of you having this plane and the ancestors there. And this actually comes from Zoe, which Mariah agrees with. And I think it was very profound for Zoe to say this, is like, you aren't meant to just do what they want. They are there for you to be able to like lean on and ask questions to, but you aren't supposed to live the same life they live. That is not the point. So yeah, you can sit there and say like, they couldn't help me get past a certain point or this or that, but that's the whole point. You were supposed to live your own journey, but it doesn't mean that you cut ties with them. So what we start to see, and Nick ends up coming back into one of these conversations. He shows up in the library together with everybody and realizes she's upset and they've been talking about this and whatever. She says, I want to reinstate my ancestral plane. We don't get into how that's going to happen in these chapters, but it comes up a couple of different times where he's like, okay, if you want to do this, and they talk about it and whatever. But I don't think I thought that was ever a possibility. And I think she was going to have to deal with the repercussion of making a choice like that in an emotional state and have to live with the consequences. But what we don't know yet is exactly how she's going to rebuild that plane. I think they're going to eventually get out of this, and Mariah is going to be involved, and Valak is going to come back into play, and the aunts and stuff, and they're all going to do some serious shit to bring back this ancestral plane, and I laugh about it, but it's because I'm kind of giddy and excited about what is going to happen when it comes down to the root craft and really making stuff happen. Now, they have this conversation with Mariah and Zoe over a couple of different instances, once when they're dining, once in the library, whatever. But before we got to this place, Bree has to be honest with Zoe about everything. And she is. She says, I am a root crafter, I'm a blood crafter, I'm the scion of Arthur. And Zoe loses her shit. And when that happens, Nick is in the room and he pulls a knife on her, and she says I'm not going to kill you. I'm just pissed that you lied. So she's basically trying to fight her as a sister. She's not trying to kill her. You realize that her mind is already so turned off from what she should be leaning into, which is being Erebus's minion and wanting to kill the scion of Arthur. Her loyalty has already changed. And it goes without saying, but it's in her actions. And that is going to be a powerful ally in due time. I just know that it is. And I know that Elijah is going to be as well. And she comments, she says, like, when you talk to Elijah, you're going to have a tougher time with him than me. But every time Bree explains something, why I didn't tell you, whatever, Zoe's like, what do you mean it's only been like not even a year? You've had your entire life flipped upside down from thinking you were just human to finding and discovering the order, to realizing you're a part of this thing, to realizing you have Rootcrafter and Bloodcrafter magic and you're the Scion of Arthur and it hasn't even been a year. Yeah, I don't freaking blame you for not telling me. She's reasonable. And I think that you don't see it as a reader coming and Bree didn't see it coming. But Zoe is a ride or die, and she's like, just tell me the truth and give me context and I can process it and move on and I'm fine. And she lives by that and we keep it pushing. So I love the fact that these moments have happened where she's like, they have their little tiffs and whatever as the truth is coming out, but she just gets it. She's like, I understand. I love that that's the kind of character that Zoe is. So all of that to say, many conversations have happened. People are more or less on the same page. The one thing I want to say is that Bree does tell Nick that the Demon King is Erebus. They are one and the same. Mariah doesn't know that. I'm pretty confident that while Mariah knows she's with the Demon King and why they want this crown and all this stuff, I don't think she knows it's Erebus. I think she only told Nick this. So Zoe knows it, obviously, and Nick knows it. But I don't even know, actually, as I say that out loud, that Zoe knows that Erebus is like on the Council of the Order. She may not connect that dot either. Don't quote me on that. I can't remember if she knows that, the extent of that. Like if she knows the body that he's wearing, I have a feeling almost that she doesn't because they don't know. Zoe didn't know that Bree was the Scion of Arthur till now. So all of the connections of what he was trying to do and how far this stuff goes with the Demon King, I don't think Zoe knows that. So there's a few things that aren't maybe totally clear, but for the most part, everyone's on the same page. And we're building allyship. These are people that are going to be in Bree's corner. And so as they have all these conversations and secret meetings and try to figure out how to survive and all of this stuff, they talk about why everybody's here, right? Bree says, me and Zoe are here for the crown. Nick says, I'm actually here for it too, but for other reasons. He talks about his quest with the Morganes, all this stuff. Mariah says, well, I'm here for you. Me and Valak knew, like we were told that people were coming here for certain things and we thought you'd be here and I've been trying to find you. So all of this bonding and all of this allyship is happening. And ultimately they have to get through this visit because as these communions have been happening, Nick and Bree as Benedict and Iris are going to get called on. And they know that they're getting called on the last day and that they're the last group to get called on. And it's because they were found outside of the ballroom in the elevator making out when all this stuff happened. So they're suspicious and they knew that this was going to happen. When it comes time for their day to do this, it's the morning that they wake up where Nick is like wrapped all over her and they have a cute little intimate moment together. This kind of last chapter or so is them going through this communion. And ultimately what ends up happening is Nick leaves to go to the restroom with Bianca, one of the main like security people. Bree is escorted by the other security people to the ballroom. They watch the other people go through the questioning. When this questioning is happening, you realize that Mikael can't feed on magic anymore. Well, you don't realize that. You knew that going in. So he feeds on emotion. So part of him asking these questions is to find the truth, but it's also, he's asking questions because as people share their honesty, it's a lot of their like grief or anger or pain or strife or whatever. He feeds on that because he needs that to survive. So they already know all this going in. They can see him using his like powers and feeding on people because of their magical abilities that the other people in this house can't, because the other people in this house, they're humans. He is like a demon, right? And these people know that he does nefarious things, but I don't think they really know that he's a demon. He has this like camouflage up of being human, but they are all magically inclined, so they can see what's really happening. So they kind of know what to expect going into this. Ultimately, what ends up happening is Nick makes a deal where he says, instead of you asking me and my fiance 5 questions each, ask me 10. And Bree doesn't know that he does this. It happens, and Bree just has to sit there and take it because Mariah and Zoe are like, look, Mikael's already okay with it. The crowd is feeding into it. Just let it happen. Ultimately, Nick takes the questions and he gets through it, But he takes it down a path of talking about Bree, because what he had said to her in the past is like, when you lie, you need to lie as close to the truth as you possibly can so it comes off very naturally and rolls off your tongue. And so it feels natural, and it's like you're saying some truths, but maybe not the whole truth. He kind of says something along those lines about how he can keep up this facade of playing this fake rich kid and all this kind of stuff, and how he's learned to hone his ability to lie over time. So when he directs Mikhail towards this whole thing with his fiance about like their relationship and feelings, he does it intentionally because his feelings for Bree are real. And he tells a story about her and Sel without it being about Bree and Sel. And his feelings and his emotions in regard to it are all true. And that's what Mikhail feeds on. So he gets satisfied through this feeding of emotion, but he doesn't end up finding out that Bree was the one that attacked his guard, aka Iris was the one that attacked his guard. So he doesn't get that answer, but he gets his feeding through Nick's emotion. Essentially, after that, they race off to the room, and Bree and Nick go back to Bree finds him in the room, and she's like, what the hell was that, right? And they have this dialogue about like, why did you do that? Where did this come from? All this kind of stuff. And he was in the shower in the bathroom as they were like talking about this. When he comes out of the bathroom, you see this like shard thing on his chest, and you come to find out that he made a deal with Ava. And what he says is, because Ava is a Morgaine, there is this history of them putting shards of the king's crown into people's chests. And what that does is that allows the power of Morgaine herself to go into people's bodies. And this was originally done by Morgaine as a way to, like, not as a nefarious thing necessarily, but as a way to, like, continue her power and her legacy for what she originally wanted it for. But it's kind of morphed into this sick way of, like, passing her power down so it, like, never dies. And what you find out through this story, which I'm very curious about, and I want to see how they talk about it, is many people have these little shards. So for one, how much of this damn crown has been embedded into people, and where are those pieces now? Does every time that the power transfer, does that person who had it before die or get killed immediately? Do they die or get killed immediately so that the person who got the new Morgaine power can take the shard? And then do they reuse the shard? So is it the same shards, or are there like thousands of shards out there? Like, I'm very curious about this, because even Bree kind of says in her monologue, like, this is a lot of shards. How big are these pieces? Where are all these pieces of the crown? If the crown isn't whole, how do we even make the crown whole for the Demon King? So a lot of questions there that we haven't gotten into yet. But what Nick says is, he says, I made this deal with Mariah. And essentially what happens is only a Morgaine can put it in, and only a Morgaine can take it out. So if anyone else tries to take it out, it will likely kill me. You can't take it out by force, all this stuff. I did it because I want to have the ability of Morgaine in my body, so that way I can take Arthur's spirit from you. And Bree's like, what are you talking about? And he says that when you were possessed by Arthur at Volition, but also in one of the other battle scenarios that we've been in, I was terrified. Because what I realized is that this man only is here for the lust of the power. He doesn't give a shit about you. And especially he realized that when he blood walked with Sel at Volition. And he talks about all these memories and these moments where he's like, I will not let that happen. I will not let Arthur overtake you, so that way you're not yourself, for your family, your friends, for your dad, for me, for Sel, for all of us. Like, I will not ever let that happen again, and I will never let him win. And the only way that I know is to be able to somehow take Arthur's spirit from you into me. And Bree's like, there's no way that you can have both Lancelot and Arthur inside of you. Like, the order talks about all of this kind of stuff for a reason. And while they may have their own nefarious reasons for it not happening, maybe there's also a very serious reason as to why they don't want that to happen, because you can't survive it. Like, you will likely die. And he was like, Bree, I'm already going to die. Whether it is because I'm the scion of Lancelot and our lives are short, whether it's because of Camlan, whether it's because, the order's going to kill me, Ava's going to kill me, like, take your pick. But I've already kind of decided and accepted that I'm not going to make it out of this alive. And Bree's like, I'm not okay with that. I don't accept that. That isn't an option. He's like, I have to do this for you. Like, I would rather it be me than you. And, she's of course like, well, I would rather it be me than you, like you can't die and all this stuff. But he essentially is like, I have to do this because if I take Arthur's spirit within me, you will live. And that's all that matters to me. That's what matters at the end of the day. And if I kill Arthur's spirit, you won't die if I'm the one to do it because it will be within my body and all this shit with the order and the table and everything will be done. And we've known for a while that Nick too wants the order to be done. And the best way for that to happen is for this whole round table shit to just die. The reality of that though is that then it's like, who protects the humans from the demons? We don't know, but it's almost like in his eyes and in some of the Scions' eyes, we are just going to continue to die. We are just going to continue to live this endless circle of like our lines creating these protectors and it never being enough. And we just want to kill the order. And I think though too now it's like kill the Demon King and maybe all of this shit will die out together. And the threat to the humans will be less or will go away. And, we can fight them without the powers of the Scion and we may die, but we can still kind of keep up this effort without all of this other stuff attached to it. And there's going to be big repercussions from all of that, right? And we don't know how any of that's going to go, but he's basically saying like, I made a deal with her to put this in me so that way I have the ability and capability to take Arthur's spirit. And how exactly that's going to happen, how that's going to go, we don't know. But the chapter that I ended on, which was chapter 47, ends with them having this very intimate conversation and emotional conversation of like, I have to do this. And this is what has to happen. We don't yet know when he's trying to do this. We don't know how he's trying to do this. But it has to be at a later point because Bree needs the powers that she has to be able to fight the Demon King. Now, I say that with an asterisk as a disclaimer because she hasn't let out the Arthur powers at all. She has shut him off. The only power that she's really used has been her bloodcraft and like that power. She has very little access to ether and let Arthur come to be. So she shut off the ancestral plane. She shut him out. She's just honed these other powers that she has to the best of her ability. And yes, a little bit of it is the Scion power, but she hasn't fully let Arthur come through. Like she doesn't know if she's fully cut off from him. Like she hasn't gone there, but she's going to need everything she can get for the Demon King. So Nick wanting to do this has to come at a later point. And so there's going to be some type of planning that's going to come away with what this looks like. So we don't exactly know when all of that is going to happen. As I wrap up this recording about these chapters, here's what I realized many chapters ago. There's no way this story is going to wrap up in 3 books. Now, you're going to laugh at me because you would say, well, if you're really in the know of the series, you would know that a while ago they already said that there was going to be 4 books. I really have gone into this series pretty blind. Like, I wasn't even fully tracking when the 3rd book was going to be released. As I've mentioned in past episodes, I'm reading the ebook, but I pre-ordered the actual physical copy. Originally, when I was recording, I was going to wait for the actual physical book to come, and that isn't coming until I think maybe March-ish of this year. And then I was like, you're silly, just read the ebook and keep on recording for the read along. So thank God that I, did that. But as of now, from what I do know, I don't think that there's a set date for book 4. Tracy Dion is going to be one of the authors that's at BookCon in April of this year. I really hope she speaks a little bit about what is coming with book 4 and when it's going to come out. That would be the best, most awesome time, I think, to talk about it and to speak on it. So we'll see. Here's what I hope though, because as I mentioned, there's about, 16, 17 chapters left in the book. Because we've been in this house for as many chapters as we've been in, a lot of stuff has to happen. Bree has to go back to Erebus and Elijah, which is going to happen soon because they're in theory through this whole house situation. But yet they still have to get the crown, which we don't know if it's going to happen right now or not. We don't know how Bree is going to get back to her people and away from Erebus. But do I think that her defeating Erebus is even going to happen in this book? I don't know. But I know for a fact she can't defeat Erebus and the Order at the same time in these chapters. There's not enough chapters for that, in my opinion. So could she tackle one of them? Yes. And do I think that it might be Erebus? Possibly. I don't really have a reason for that. But she can't do all of it. But you also have to think, okay, let's go backtrack a half second to the list. You got to get the crown. She has to go back to Erebus and explain all this stuff. She has to defeat Erebus. They have to defeat the Order. We have to figure out where Cell is and like get him. Everybody has to come back together. So there's a lot of stuff that has to happen. I think that because Bree can't defeat the Order without Erebus being around because of this blood mark, she's going to defeat him first. That is going to have a ripple effect through the community and all of the demon kind in regard to the Order. And then they're going to attack the Order and like defeat all this stuff with Arthur and these scions and whatever. Mind you, she also has to get back her ancestral plane. Yes, it's been noted that Tracy Deonn has said that book 4 is going to be the culmination of a lot of things. And it's going to really be the one that ties it all together because a lot of stuff has to happen. But even right now, I don't feel confident that we're going to get through a lot of how we save Cell. So I think that at minimum, book 4 is going to be 2, 3, 4 of these things happening at the same time or, in the same book. And maybe a big thing happens through the rest of these chapters. But my gosh, like if everything happens in book 4, defeating Erebus, the Order, fixing the plane, finding Cell, like it's possible. It could all they've said it's all going to come to a head in book 4. It really could all culminate and happen there for sure. But I do kind of hope that some juicy stuff is really planned out, at least in these last chapters of this book. I really am excited to see how Zoe and Elijah become allies fully of Bree and help her through all this, because I think that they're going to be an integral part of her defeating Erebus and the Order both. We still don't know what's going to happen with Alice. Nothing has happened with that yet. So I think Alice, like I said, I think she's going to come away with some powers in all of this. I think she's going to be an integral part of defeating the Order, if I had to guess. I mean, all of these things are going to come together and these people are going to really go at it. Do I think that defeating Erebus and the Order is going to happen in the same battle? Maybe. It could, right? They could be in the battle against the Order and Erebus could come and they could realize he's the Demon King, and then maybe some of the Order people go against Erebus. Maybe they don't. I don't know. There's a lot of ways that this could go. But my gosh, as many chapters as this house has taken up, which I'm a little frustrated about, I'm at the same time very excited that it happened and that her and Nick have gotten this time. I am very uncertain about what is going to happen with Cell, because one of the things that I didn't mention in the interrogation that Nick had with Mikhail is his whole story about Bree and Cell and all of this was him talking about the fact that he knows that Bree and Cell have feelings for each other. And as much as it would be really hard, and he doesn't even know how he would act if that came to fruition in front of him, if that is where their true happiness is supposed to be for both of them, he would want it to be that way, because that's what he wants for both of them. And I think there's a part of him that says that because he knows that this whole mixing of the lines can't happen. And even though he doesn't give a shit about that, I do think that there is this reality of like, unless we take the Order down and really kibosh all of this stuff, there's no way that we're going to be together. But even if we do kibosh the Order, I may not survive that. And we may all not make it through. So if the reality is at the end of the day that some of us aren't left standing, if some of them is you guys and you two have that care and affection for each other, then yes, be together. I don't know if all of this conversation about Nick taking Arthur is going to culminate in him dying. I do see a world, unfortunately, where all of this love and affection that they have in this little moment inside this house is going to be all that they're ever going to get. Nick has said his most intimate things to her. He's revealed all of what he feels and thinks for her. There's a reality where Nick is the one that has to sacrifice himself to kill off Arthur and Lancelot and all this stuff. And that, he also says that, like, if I do that, at least the last bit of the humanness that Cell's holding on to will dissipate, because his tie to me will be gone, and it will make it easier for him to just like grieve because the demonio won't care because his humanness will be gone. Like, he's kind of thought about all of this, and I think he's accepted the fact that he's going to have to die. And I really, 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 really don't want him to. And is there a world where Bree uses her blood or her root craft and her medium abilities when she fixes the plane to like revive him or see him or speak to him? Maybe. Would it be weird if she revives him? Maybe not. But would it be weird if she only speaks to him as a spirit? Yeah, especially if she's living this cushy, lovey-dovey life with Cell as like partners. But I don't, and would I want that? No, I think I would rather just Nick be passed and like be gone. But we know that his spirit would be around. So my gosh, I don't know. There's so many branches off of this tree and the way that things could go, but we're getting to the end of this book and I don't know yet when the 4th is coming, and we're gonna just have to hold on tight because there's so much good stuff that's happening that, man, whenever that book comes, woo, I'm already excited, and I know I'm going to have a lot of patience for it. So anyway, that was chapters 35 through 47. Next time you hear from me for this book is going to be the end. I'm going to have read through all the rest of these chapters. I'm really stoked about all of this character development. I'm really glad that Tracy Deonn decided to make this go from a trilogy to a 4-book series. I think she's right. There's just too much that would have been too rushed. There's no way that it could have fit into one book. It could have. It's not that I don't have faith in that. It absolutely could have fit. But to extend everything and not jam it into 3 books and to give us the justice of 4, as frustrated as I am to have to wait for it, it's only because I love the writing and these characters, and the development is just so chef's kiss. This is what needed to happen. So really excited for everything that's to come. Can't thank you enough for following along. Please share in the YouTube comments. How are you feeling about these chapters? What did you think about all of their interaction in this house? What are your hypotheses for what's to come? How are you feeling about the characters? This is a book that everyone is evolving. Mariah is finding herself. Zoe is evolving. Bree and Nick, everyone is evolving. And we're really just seeing people step the F up because they need to have their biggest game face on for when push comes to shove and they have this battle. And I'm really excited about it. So thank you all for following along and listening. Please make sure you're following my Instagram. I'm trying stuff out on TikTok as well. Obviously, episodes are posted on YouTube. Really just can't thank you all enough and appreciate you all being here and reading along as we continue this Oathbound journey. So thank you again, friends, and until next time.